nonprofits and the people behind them. Casey Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This Casey Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. I'm Ruth Baumdiggis. For those in the education world, the quest is always on to find ways to engage students in real-world learning that can prepare them for life after high school. The CAPS program, which stands for the Center for Advanced Professional Studies, is one such effort working to provide students with those real-world learning opportunities with professionals in the field. And now there's a CAPS network that works to collaborate, innovate, and educate. It focuses on education to employment through professional-based learning. Joining us on Casey Cares today is the man in charge of this exciting effort, Mohn, who serves as the president and executive director of the CAPS Network. Welcome, Corey.
Well, thank you, Ruth. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm really excited to talk about all of this.
Well, for folks who maybe aren't familiar with the CAPS program in general, please feel free to elaborate. What is CAPS and who's it for?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting over the years, the different ways in which that's been explained, because we all have our own shared experience of what it was like to go through the school system, be a high school student. And if you're of a certain demographic, our experiences were actually pretty common, as it turns out. And sometimes when you explain things that are quite different, it's hard to have that really sink in. So one way that I describe it to help people understand is think of your high school experience having an opportunity to serve as a consultant to businesses and nonprofits in the community, leaning into an area of interest for you, something that maybe you already know you have a strength in, but ultimately, think that you have an affinity for, something that you're passionate about, and you want to try it out. And you want to do so in as safe a way as possible. And so having an opportunity while you're in high school as part of a course that bears high school credit and often college credit, being able to actually roll your sleeves up and do authentic work for one of these organizations in the community. What a great way to learn, right? I've got a friend of ours, a friend of the program, who always asks me, how did you learn to ride a bike? And he proceeds to be very sarcastic about, oh, you must have just read a book about how to ride a bike, and then you got on and you rode and you had no problems. And of course, that's not the right answer. You don't read a book about it. You don't watch videos. I mean, you can do all those things, but until you actually get on the bike and probably fall down a few times, do you actually learn how to do it? And same goes for life. Like you've got to have some real practice. And we do that through the high school experiences for students.
So let's take CAPS back to its original founding. Where did it start? When did it start? And how did you make that happen?
Yeah, well, I'll lead by saying it wasn't me. I've had the great pleasure. I was born and raised in the community here in Kansas City. Found my way back here after college and starting a business on the other side of the state of Missouri in St. Louis. But came into this story a few years in. So the origin story, Dr. Tom Trigg, who was the superintendent in Blue Valley School District and ended up serving for, I believe it was 11 years, early in his tenure, came to a school district. Those of you around Kansas City are perhaps aware, Blue Valley has, over the years, historically been a high-performing school district. It's a corporate suburb of Kansas City. It's certainly got a large business base, all of those things. But when he came in concert with the Board of Education, were audacious enough to ask, what are we missing? And where it could have been very easy to just put it in cruise control and say, look, we've got great assessment scores, academically, everything looks great on the whole. Instead, questions were being asked. And one of the great questions was, are these students, when they leave us and they get past their academic experience, are they being as successful as they could be? And the answer was a little surprising to many, which was actually not really. And it came down to what we now refer to as durable skills, the ability for an individual to uh, interact in ambiguity, to exhibit leadership, know how to work in a team, know how to manage yourself through tough situations. All of the things we know make people successful, but typically are not assessed academically. And of course, then the question was, okay, we're probably not doing that at a high level. How would we do it? And that's where this really interesting model started to develop in concert with the school board, with the superintendent, then eventually hiring the original executive director of the program and bringing in a team of initial educators that many of which had professional experience to say the fastest way to have students experience these situations, these real life situations, is not to simulate it. It's not to talk about it. It's to fast forward these students past high school and past college even, and drop them into what would essentially be projects that relate to what they would do in their first career job, and let them try things out and rule things out, build confidence. Yes, fail, but fail in a safe environment where it's supported and actually encouraged, so that when you get to prime time, when you're off in the world doing your thing, one, you have a better sense of what your thing is, what that spark is for you, but you also have the confidence and the skill sets to become a self advocate to go make that happen. We always talk about, let's have every student leave knowing what it is that they can do to make the world a better place. And that looks different for every young person. It looks different for every adult too.
Mm-hmm.
But if we start young, we've got a great chance to make really positive impact here in the world.
So starts up in Blue Valley, 2009.
Yep,
Drive us through a little bit where that went and where the initial expansion came about.
absolutely. So a short, somewhat fun story. Fun now because none of us are in the middle of the decision-making process that happened then. So as the story goes, the original plan, and I appreciate you mentioning 2009, that was the year, that fall, that the program launched. The original plan was to build runway and time to kind of figure out how to create a program and plan a program that would live inside of a new next gen career center, located in Overland Park in the Blue Valley School District footprint. There was so much energy from the Board of Education at the time. And as it turned out, a few of the board members had their own children who were getting close to exiting the K-12 experience. And they weren't happy with the timeline. Once the idea had percolated and they had agreed that this was a program to move forward with, they wanted it immediately. And that urgency created a lot of stress initially for the school district. But what it did, we could never have honestly planned and replicated. It created a situation where students and instructors in the fall of 2009 were positioned essentially with classrooms embedded in industry locations because there was no building. The building had not been constructed yet. It wasn't set to open until fall of 2010. So for those familiar with the area, Black and Veatch Engineering, headquartered in Kansas City here in Overland Park, they hosted engineering students. DLR Group, which is a design and architecture firm here in the community, they hosted architecture students in a conference room. There were students at what used to be known as Freedom Bank at 143rd and Metcalf, roughly. It's now Landmark. The bank was sold. But getting those students embedded and out of necessity actually created the culture that moved forward for CAPS. And how that leads to your question, which is how did this thing grow, is these initial industry partners were willing to take a chance. They were willing to say, I believe these high school students can lean in, they can add value, they'll bring energy to our organizations. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we're willing to run the experiment. And because of that, and running and kind of testing different, what we would call client connected projects, we often ask our industry partners, and we asked them back then, what is the 10th thing on your to-do list as a professional in your job? Everyone has a 10th thing. You never get to it. It's not mission critical. but it's on your list for a reason. What if you were to hand those over to some student consultants and let them take a stab at that while you free yourself up to work on those mission critical things in your organization? And because of the energy generated around real value being delivered back by the students, word got out, and now suddenly various industries were interested in partnering. And even more interesting, other school systems, not just in Kansas City, but across the country, were coming to Kansas City to see what this CAPS thing was, what these high school students were doing. They heard the stories, but they couldn't believe it was real. That students were showing up dressed professionally, looking you in the eye, giving you a solid handshake, and telling you, fighting over themselves to tell you the projects they're working on in school. That led to a demand that got us thinking, what could we do to continue to build energy and value for our community? And the answer became what we call now CAPS Network, which is a consortia of schools, innovative pockets, schools and districts across the country that now collaborate through a nonprofit that we created here in the Kansas City area, CAPS Network Inc., which officially got designated by the IRS about 3 years ago after we built the brand up and realized this thing has legs. And we want to continue to have it rooted here in Kansas City. So it's been real exciting. We now have over 100 affiliate programs that operate this model that started in Overland Park, Kansas 15 years ago, across 21 states, 4 countries. A little over 180 school districts have students that participate. It's just been an amazing ride, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg, which is incredibly exciting.
So you're a nonprofit. Why that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing I take a lot of pride in, my background is in entrepreneurship and economic development. I didn't get into education until uh, a friend of mine let me know about this opportunity to come and serve CAPS and be very entrepreneurial, but in a different sector, in a sector that's not really necessarily known for being nimble and innovative.
Right.
But my parents, both educators in the community. My dad was a teacher and an administrator in Independence, Missouri. My mother was an early childhood educator in Blue Springs, Missouri, and um, always loved what they did. I've got education in my DNA, so to speak. And so when I got involved in this, I take a lot of pride in the fact that this program started in a public school. That's very rare to see a nationwide or a global network that started in a public school. Usually it's an intermediary, someone that just launches a program. Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
for-profit. So the path to a nonprofit was essentially one out of necessity. The program in our initial launch of a network was still housed inside a Blue Valley School District. It was a function of the original CAPS program. But because of the growth of interest, when we initially launched the network in the spring of 2015, there were 14 inaugural members of that network. These were people that had come and toured. We had provided some consulting to them. They had gotten something started or were about to launch something in their communities. And so they were kind of the initial experimenting class or the early adopters. We knew we could handle that and not have it, be a distraction to things happening locally. It was going to add value and we could manage it. When 14, the next summer became 25 programs. When 25, the next summer became 38, and the next summer became 52. Suddenly, we were having conversations with our Board of Education saying, this is growing and it's not going to stop growing. How do we support the growth, but also ensure that the school district can maintain focus on core functions in support of the local program of Blue Valley Caps? And because of that conversation and some kind of diving around in the community and asking questions, we started teasing out, okay, what are possible structures? And it was after a while and talking to folks in terms of potential revenue streams to move this work forward, keeping in plain sight the purity of this and like the purpose driven nature of it, it became very clear that a 501c3 was the appropriate structure beyond going to a for-profit lens or anything like that. So worked with the board, created a nice structure that maintains the integrity of the founding of the program in Blue Valley, but gives flexibility to myself and our team and our board at the CAPS network to go out and do things at a bigger scale that take some of those what would have been awkward structural adjustments that we would have needed to make inside the school district, kind of taking that off the table.
We're talking with Corey Mohn. He is the executive director and president of the CAPS Network, and we're unwrapping this pretty amazing organization born out of local passion, and now you're everywhere. I want you to talk in a minute about some of your affiliates, but if someone is or an organization is part of the network, what are their responsibilities or obligations? For example, is there a core curriculum they have to follow? Are there measures they have to meet?
Yeah, I love the way you frame the question, because oftentimes when we initially are approached, and I don't, this is not, it's not a knock on anyone, it's kind of human nature, but usually the first question is, what can you do for me? And, when you're in a business, if we were selling a curriculum, for example, that's a very valid first question is what are the things that you can bring to me because you're the vendor and I'm the customer? In our model, we've structured things quite differently. Yes, there are elements that we bring to the table that are valuable. There are resources that people want and need. There are connections to people that are really impactful for them. But there's a key component to how you frame that question, which is, what are my responsibilities? What is my role in giving back? How do we make this an empowered ecosystem, not just a hub and spoke model where we have created something as a central hub or portal and you come to us as you need things, but you're not necessarily connecting in a deep way with any of the other folks that are working with us. We knew to scale this around purpose, to give as many students as possible, regardless of their zip code, the opportunity to have an enlightened self-discovery process and to connect through authentic work before they left high school, that it couldn't just be a brand in a central location that was somehow trying to lift up over 13,000 public school districts in the United States, that it had to have almost a viral effect. I've hesitated the last 4 years to use the viral term because I think we still have PTSD, but it's true. It's locally empowered. So, but that it behooves us to find partners that are willing, certainly, to take selfishly what they need to do what they need to do locally to lift up their own program and to get it to a place of sustainability. But it also means, how do we feed back in? Because as we feed back in, we also make connections, we learn, because when others experiment in their own local location, their own programs, their own communities, they try things differently. I often use the metaphor of, most people, unless you're lactose intolerant, love ice cream, right? You may not like what it does to your body. You may have other reasons for not eating it every night. But most people say ice cream is a good thing. So if we said this, what we call profession-based learning, most people that experiment with it or have a chance to do it really enjoy it. So if profession-based learning is ice cream, there are lots of different flavors of ice cream. Like, you don't have to be mint chip, right? Maybe Blue Valley is chocolate chip, and Northland Caps, which serves 10 districts north of the river here in the Kansas City area, they're Rocky Road. It's okay. We actually learn from trying other flavors, and we can take pieces of what we learn. But that means we all have to be in this mentality of sharing and helping and growing together. So there are, I don't call them obligations. It's actually, to me, it's a joy when people find I have something I can give. It's that power of being like a mentor, and that I've done something well. It's almost a little celebration of what I've done, that I get to contribute that back and see my work live on and go beyond where I am, go to another community. And that's powerful. So on our end, we don't provide a curriculum. We provide a framework around our core values of what CAPS is. We've developed a number of playbooks around the aspects of engaging in your community in an authentic way, creating these 10th thing on the to-do list projects, also how you shift your mindset as an educator. And then we use the power of convening. So every 2 weeks, we open up a Zoom room and we connect with people from all across the country that are doing this work. Not everyone can make it every time, and that's just the life of an educator. Your
Uh,
schedule is not really under your control a lot of the time. But the ones that do, we talk through, some key things happening across the country that we're seeing, but we open up a lot of time for sharing of best practices, troubleshooting. So building enough trust that people are vulnerable and will say, I'm really struggling with how I market this program to students, working with our counselors, like anybody have any help? Because I'm really stuck. And we brainstorm those things together and we share experiences. And then we reserve time to celebrate all the good things that are happening. And through that connectivity, that's I tell people I can give you a list of like these are the values the value you'll get out of joining our network. But the thing that's really hard to put a price tag on are the relationships that you build. And when you're stuck or when you've got something like a cool partnership that you can move on and you want to partner with you, you have a team of family members that are doing similar work that you can call and say, hey, you want to get in on this? Like, this is a really cool thing. Or, hey, I know I picked your brain on this one topic, but man, I got stuck again. Here's what's going on. Like, can you help me? And man, those connections are so important.
to be an affiliate, what does that mean? If I'm in school district X in South Dakota,
Yeah.
what do I do and what do I pay? And all, I mean, let's get down to those brass tacks.
Brass tacks. Absolutely. So one of the benefits of us going the nonprofit route is it's given us the opportunity to leverage and diversify our revenue stream. So we're able to get some philanthropic support, some government support. We have some individual donors that contribute to what we do. Also corporate, because our model is so connected to the business world, whether that's for profit or nonprofit with these client projects. Oftentimes, corporate entities are willing to donate because this is typically our CAPS affiliates don't charge for services. This is an educational experience. But what
Mhm.
happens is oftentimes the business partners, whether they know it or not when they start, get something of value. And as you likely know, Ruth, because I feel this too at times, when you get something of value and you don't pay for it, you feel almost guilty. It's like, I want to make it right. So a lot of the times the way people make it right is they donate to the program or sometimes to the national nonprofit. I say all that because what that does is it gives us a chance to create a model where districts that are interested in joining our network, if we have conversation, they come out and see a program in action, we want to make sure they know what they're getting into and that it matches their vision and we're aligned on core values. But if that all happens, it becomes a licensing arrangement between that local school district or that chamber of commerce, whoever the entity is in that community, and CAPS Network, our nonprofit. And with that, we have a modest licensing fee that they pay up front to be a part of the group, to have access to our resources. And if they want to use the name CAPS, it gives them the ability to do that, to leverage that. And then it converts after that initial engagement and we do onboarding with them. What happens is it converts over to something that would be akin to an association or a chamber where everyone is
Okay.
contributing an annual amount for the good of the order, right? The good of the cause. And that money gets pooled, and then we can use that on elements that our members tell us we need help with X, or could you develop a product Y that would really help us? We can use those funds to do that. I've been really proud of the fact that we've structured this in such a way that it is not cost prohibitive to any school district or community that wants to do this. Just to give you a sense of it, for this last year, every district that came to us was able to sign up and be a part of our network in the first year for less than $10,000. And on an annual basis, at this point, it's $1,500 a year from each of these entities, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you realize we have 103 affiliate programs, you start pooling that money every year, and that's what really gives us an opportunity to make a difference. Is everyone chips in, so it does have a kind of a co-op feel to it, which I appreciate the co-ownership feeling and the empowerment that drives locally. That's been a real key for us.
You're growing like gangbusters. And in just the few minutes that we have left together, what do you see as a 5, 10-year vision for the network?
Yeah, well, that'd be a whole nother episode. I get real wound up about. We just literally, gosh, 3-4 weeks ago, sat down. Our staff team, sat down and we charted out. We called it the dream state for 2034. So we were talking about if we could wave our magic wands around the work that we do, staying true to our purpose, what would things look like in 2034? With the goal of reverse engineering our actions back to current day and stepping in, 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And it's pretty radical, I must say. Like, we are not afraid to dream. The key, I think, and I've actually just been participating with some folks in a professional learning opportunity in another state. And it was something that I challenged them with, which is sometimes it's hard to get people to dream big. Sometimes it's not hard to get them to dream big, but then it's hard to get them to take action. And this recognition that you can dream big and start small, right? You know where you're headed, but you got to take a step. So succinctly, I would say the 10-year vision is our ability to connect students in many more ways to explore what's out there for them. That will involve tech. It will absolutely involve AI. It will mean connecting students across geography using technology. We also think there's still room for the in-person experience. So we're actually one thing on our list that I think is really intriguing is we want to create a student-led gathering. So essentially, our mantra in CAPS is where students lead. We want the energy and the ideas and the direction for our movement to come more and more from our customer, from the high school students. The other thing we're seeing is, and we're going to start stepping into this rather soon, is we believe that a lot of this work can happen before high school. So we're looking at a middle school model. We're even looking at what elementary students can do connected to professionals to get them their wheels turning, to get their ideas. Kindergartners are some of the most creative people I've ever met. I don't know about you, but if you want to like dream about what your industry could do, go sit in a kindergarten classroom and ask those kids, or go to their cafeteria and start asking them questions. You will come out with amazing ideas that you would have never thought of. And so we want to lean into that and start scaling younger with the activity. So and the last thing I'll say, and there's so many things on the list, but the last thing I'd say that kind of we see the potential is we just lifted up a virtual student media agency. These are students from different parts of the country that have interest in marketing, creative media. They want to engage, they want to work projects. They don't always have a whole cohort of students around them that have that same interest. So we said, what if we built what would be like VML Y&R, but it was all high school students. They were all in all parts of the country, and the client was CAPS. So CAPS Network needs a communications division. What if we had 30 students from 8 or 9 different states that were that agency? And we've got them working projects for us. They're creating our social media content right now. Probably the half of the last 3 weeks of posts on LinkedIn, for example, have been directly from students.
I love that.
Super excited about where the future is headed. And, with the right use of tech, the right use of AI, leaning into the curiosity of students and what they're interested in, I think we can make a huge difference in making the world better and having everybody be happier and working in areas they want to work in.
And we sure need that. It's Corey Mohn. It's the CAPS Network. You can go to their website at www.yourcapsnetwork.org and keep up with them. It's going to be tough, but we encourage you to do it. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Ruth. This was fantastic. And thanks for everyone out there who's listening. I know you have a lot of folks that listen in the nonprofit community. So important, and it's a huge part of Kansas City. And as a Kansas Citian, I'm thrilled with everything that's happening in this community. And we're very proud that CAPS started here. So thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for joining us for KC Cares. We're Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We are produced by Charitable Communications, which is a nonprofit. And this Casey Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. To be a guest on Casey Cares, please visit our website, kccaresonline.org, and you can spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Casey Cares Radio and Instagram at Casey Cares Online. And don't forget, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m., you can catch us on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on Casey Cares.